Today's daf is daf Sama, and we're starting with Azal on the top line. Azal Rav Gevia, who came from a place called Bei Kasil, went and Amr L'Shmaita, and he said and transmitted a din in the name of Rav Huna, Shechayev Lotzia Beget, Kameder of Ash. He presented this din of Rav Huna in front of Rav Ash, that even the case of a Kohen Gadol who was married to his Mefutas Atzmo, he has to give her a get. Amalei Rav Ashi responded to Rav Gevia, V'arav Rab Yochanan the Amrit Shavayu, Bogeres umukas eitz, Lo yisa v'imnasa nasu. A Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a girl who's above 12.6. She's a bogeres because kalu b'sulel. Umukas eitz. If her b'sula were removed because of a makkah, she had a bang against whatever an eitz, she didn't have bias adam, then the Kohen Gadol should not marry her because she's not a b'sula. But if Nasa, he went ahead and he married a Nasa, he doesn't have to divorce her. And this is all conditional on the fact that she did not have a be'ilah. And dafka Nasa, but Kidesh, then we would force him to divorce her. But Nasa, we don't force him to divorce her. So what does Rav Ashi derive from this this agreement of both Rav and Rabbi Yochanan? Alma, we derive from this that why don't we force him, the Kohen Gadol, to divorce her, even though L'chatchila is not allowed to marry her in the cases of Bogeres and Mukaseitz. Sofa Leos Bogeres Tachta. Even had he married a Nara, not a Bogeres, she eventually will become a Bogeres. And so too, Sofa Leos Mukas Eitz Tachta. She will eventually have Be'ilu with him and she'll lose her Besula. I mean, this is a little bit of a strange halacha. I mean, the Gemara says later on, and it's especially prominent in Ksubit Daf Yud Aleph, that Ein Mukas Eitz B'Basar. In any event, Sofa Leos Mukas Eitz Tach argues Rav Ashi, Hachanami, by analogy, let's apply this to the case of a Kohen Gadol marrying his own Mefuta, his own Anusa. Why does he have to divorce her? Sofa Leos Be'ula Tachta. Eventually, he'll make her into a Be'ula. And therefore, we should allow him to be Mekayim her, just like we allow him, according to Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, to be Mekayim a Bogeres and a Mukas Eitz. And the Gemara ends with Kasha, that this din of Rav Huna remains unanswered, because we derive from Rav and Rabbi Yochanan that ain't tzarich l'garnish. We have a brisa that we quoted earlier. Nusas chaver mefutas chaver lo yisa v'imnasa Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov omer avlad cholol v'chacham omer avlad kosh. What is the final ruling in this issue? Omer Rav Huna Marav halacha ki Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. We're going to paskin l'chumra according to Rav. The vlad in this case is a cholol. V'chein Amar Rav Gidol Amar Rav. We have another transmission in the name of Rav, this time through Rav Gidol. Halacha ki Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. The vlad is a chol. Ika di Amri. Some say the Rav Huna in the name of Rav did not say that the halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, but rather Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav my time of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. In other words, why did Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov come to the conclusion that the Vlad who's born from a Kohen Gadol who marries his own Anusa, his own Mefuta, is a Cholom? And the answer is Savarla ki Rabbi Loz. And Rabbi Loz later on in Daf Samach Aleph in the Brisa Paskins that Ponei Abol Apnuya Asa Zona. And if she's a Zona, then she's Asura Ola Balav of Isha Zona V'Chalolo Yikachu. Hence, the child that's born from the Nesuim of Chayvi Lav and the Kahuna is a Cholom. And now the Gemara is going to analyze this position of Rav Huna Marav, making an interdependence between Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, meaning just like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds that the Vlad is a Cholol in the case of Mefutas Atzmo, so too Rabbi Lazar holds that Ponei Abol Apnuya Asa Zona. So the Gemara is going to question that tlut, that interdependence. So me look at what he does. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov actually hold like Rabbi Lazar, but Kaimalon Mishnas Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Kavanoki. We always passing like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, whether it's in a Mishnah or a Brisa Halacha Kamosa. Ve'ilu beha, with regard to Ponei Abol Apnuya. Shalol Shem Ishas Hasa Zona Omrav Amram Rav Ein Halacha Rabbi Lazar. We don't paskin like Rabbi Lazar. So therefore, it's impossible to maintain that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds like Rabbi Lazar, because halacha is like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov bechol makom. And the Gemara blives with kasha. This is really an objection to Rav Huna, who says that the reasoning and the logic of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is predicated on Rabbi Lazar and Ponei Abol Apnuya. And the Vlad is a cholol because of the din of Ponei Abol Apnuya Rabbi Lazar, that if the relationship was out of wedlock, Ponei Abol Apnuya, the Vlad is a mamzer. The Vlad is a cholol because she's a zona. And that's what Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is saying in the case of Anusas Chavero or Anusas Atzmo. The Vlad is a cholol. Could that really be? Unless you're assuming that Ponei Abol Apnuya saw zona, and we don't paskin that as so zona. So how can you tell me we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Kavanoki in the case of Anusas of an Anusa? Now I said it was Anusas Atzmo. I guess the Rishonim are learning this sugya in the case of Anusas Chavero, because in Anusas Atzmo, we said that in Nasa Nasu, and the Machlokas Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and the Chachoma only applies in the case of Anusas Chavero. That's what it seems from the Mefarshim. Again, this requires a lot more research. Now the Gemara quotes a machlokas in a brisa, which is going to be reinterpreted. And that's going to be Rav Ashi Omar. So that Rav Ashi is going to apparently agree that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, in the case of an Anusa, is really reflecting the Shita Rabbi Lazar, Ponei Abol Apnuya. No. I mean to say he does not hold, as we said in the Maskana, like Rabbi Eliezer. We don't pass like Rabbi Ponei Abol Apnuya Asa Zona, but rather Eino Zona. So therefore, if a Kohen Gadol has a relationship with Anusa Mefutas Chavero, he will not violate the law of Isha Zona etc. Lo yikachu, but he will violate the essay of ki im besula me'amav yikach isha, which means besula velo be'ula. The lav or iser that's derived from the essay of besula yikach is called an essay. So what new light can we shine according to this Rav Ashi's analysis on the machlokus Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and Rabbanon in a case of anusas chaver, the Kohen Gadol had a relationship with whether the vlad is a cholol or not. The yesh chol michayve essay kom miflugi. Now I don't know what chayve essay means. I mean, I understand in the case of Ba'ula, that's an Isur Kahuna l'Kohen Gadol, and then you get the machlokas whether the vlad is a mam to be chayve. But what's chayve essay in the plural? What other examples do we have of chayve essay in Isur Kahuna besides Ba'ula l'Kohen Gadol? In the note here, I don't know. He doesn't seem to have a possibility. I don't know. In any event, now Rav Ashi analyzed it. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Savar Yesh Chol Michav, that the vlad that was born from a woman who's prohibited under an essay is called a chol. Rabbanan Sabri Ein Chol Michav. Okay, that I understood, but what is the logic here? So far, we're just reformulating the machlokas. So the Gemara asks, "My timer, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, why does he hold that there's a cholol in a birth, someone who's born from chayv?" The Gemara says the chsiv, but the Torah says, and this is in the beginning of Emor, Parshas Perek Chaf Aleph of Vayikra. It says, "Almanu grush v'chalol zono es elu lo yikach ki im besula me'amav yikach isha." And then Uksiv immediately after it says, "V'lo yichalel zaro bi'amav." So Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov sees here a profound connection between the two psukim. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds that the pasuk lo yichal zaro that dictates that the vlad becomes a cholol is choser akulu. It goes back to the entire Inyan. Even what it says at the beginning of this section, they knew that he should marry a basula, not a ba'ula, which is only an Isur essay. If he violates that essay, the vlad is a cholol. That's why he paskins in the brisa that Kohen Gadol Shenosa anusas chavero, mafutas chavero, who's a ba'ula, and there's a violation of an essay, the vlad is a chol. For Rabbanon, they hold that the pasuk lo yichal zaro doesn't go back to the beginning of the Inyan, meaning the over be'essay in the case of ki im besula me'amav yikach yitza, but rather it goes back to the beginning of the pasuk that says, Almana ugrusha v'chalola zona es ele lo yikach. So the lo yichal zara goes back to the beginning of the pasuk where there's a law, but not to the end of the pasuk, which is an essay of besula yikach isha. And the word ele, right? So we saw that it says es ele lo yikach is a mafsik. Hifsika inyan. So we have like two parts. You have chayve lavim, then you have ela that separates it from chayve essay in the case of a ba'ula. And this chiluk is coming to teach you that only me'ela, meaning only what came before ela, which is the violation of the lav in the cases of almana grucha chalola, then there's chalolos, but not in what comes after Vela, in the essay of Besula Mi'av Dikachicha. There's no chalolos that's generated by violation of the essay. Rabbi Eliezer and Yaakov Amar, Ele, it's not coming as a mute to the case of Nolad Mi Ba'ula Kohen Gadol to tell you that it doesn't produce chalolos, but rather Lime'ute Nida. It's coming to exclude a Kohen who had a relationship with his wife when she was a Nida. The Vlad is not a Chalol. Now, why is it that in this case the Vlad is not a Chalol? He writes here in the note, Lidas Rabbanon, correct, because the Gemara only quotes Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who says, Leme'ute Nida, Nechleku Rishonim Avlad Mi Nida Nasech Chalol. Okay, so we should know that according to one school of thought in Rishonim, even the Rabbanon would agree to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov that the Vlad coming from a Nida is not a Chalol. And I would suggest that we could ask the question, why is the Vlad coming from a Nida, not a Mamzer? Because his Mamzer is from Chayve Krisus. So apparently, in the constellation of Arias, Nida is in a separate category. And now we're saying that, at least according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, once, or just like Nida doesn't generate Mamzeris, the violation of Nida doesn't generate a psul of Chalolos. The Gemara clarifies, Kiman Azal Hadisanya. In other words, this brisa that records the understanding of the word Ele in Almona Ugrusha v'Chalola Zonas Ele Lo Yikach Me Ela Ata Osech Chalol V'Iata Osech Chalol Minida. So we have a brisa that explicitly goes on record as interpreting the word me'ela as teaching us that there's no chalolus from nida. Meaning that if a Kohen has a relation with a nida, the vlad is not a chalol. The Gemara says, Kiman ki Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. That's the way Rav Ashi understood Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, then how he darshans the word ela, it's coming to as a miut of a nolad min nida that is not a chalol. And this drasha of me'ela therefore takes out the hifsika inyan interpretation of ela, substituting ela as a miut for bal and nida. So as far as be'ula is concerned, that would generate chalolos, but nida is being excluded, and it does not generate chalolos. That is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So it's really interesting when you think about it. Chayve Esse is a lot lower on the echelon of punishments, really on the bottom. And yet it's going to generate chalol, according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, in the case of Ula Kohen Gadol. Anusas chaver, mfutas chaver. But chayve krisis in the case of nida will not generate chalol. It's kind of counterintuitive, to say the least. Now the Gemara raises the following kasha. Again, according to Rav Ashi, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who rejects the Chacham and he holds that the word Teva is not a machalik. And even in a case of Eseh, a violation of the Eseh, in a Be'ula, L'Kohen Gadol, the child is a Halal, and it's only coming to exclude Nida. So why does the Torah write, Almana Ugrusha V'Chalol Zonas Eila Lo Yikach Ki Im B'Sulam Yamav Yikach Isha? The word Eila appears in the middle of the pasuk, wedging between Chayve Lav and Chayve Esse. Nichteve, wouldn't it make more sense that the Torah would write Eila Libaso? It's after you've already integrated both Chayvi Lav and Chayvi Esei. In generating Chalolus, now add the word Ela at the end as a miut to exclude Nida. That Nola Minam Nida is not a Chalol. Kasha. So this is a difficulty the Gemara raises against Rav Ashi, who interprets Machlokes, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Rabbanon, based on how to read these psukim, and especially the word Eila, and we don't have an answer to this question. Now, the Kohanim are not allowed to be Mitamil Mes, as we know, except for the 7 relatives, where they're Mutali Tameh, and this is all based on the beginning of Parshas Emor, this week's Parsha. And Achoso is the complicated case, because the Torah qualifies Achoso as Achosa Besula Asher Lo Hoysel Ish Lo Yitama. So with regard to all the 6 relatives other than Achoso, there is an unqualified heter for the Kohen to be mitame for the burial of any of those. But in the case of Achoso, which is unique on this list, there's a qualification over here. Now, the Gemara is going to quote a brisa which records a machlokas tanoim. In what scenario is the Kohen allowed to be mitami to Achoso, and in what situations is he enjoined from being mitami to his Achoso? Achoso, we're talking about a Kohen Hedjot now. Arusa, and now she died, so she was an Arusa. What's the machlokas tanon? Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, mitami. The Kohen will be mitami to bury his sister. She was only an Arusa, and therefore she is included in the description of Lo Haisel Ish. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon disagree. Omrim ein mitami lo. The Kohen is enjoined from being mitami to his sister. And you wonder why. I mean, this halacha, this chumrah is not readily apparent. Anyway, now we go on to a universally accepted case, and that's achoso anusa umefuta divrei hakol ein mitami lo. I mean, that we understand intuitively. Anusa mefuta cannot be described as asher lo haisa leish. Now, what about achoso mukas eitz? Mukas eitz ein mitami lo divrei Rabbi Shimon, because she ceases to be, according to Shimon, a besula. She lost a besula through a makas eitz. And a higher Rabbi Shimon Omer, Ru'uya l'kohen gadol mitami lo, she'ein ru'uya l'kohen gadol ein mitami. That achoso, in order to override the tumah for a kohen hedjot, has to be in the category of ru'uya l'kohen gadol. She's got to be a basula. And then and only then could the kohen hedjot be mitami. But ein ru'uya l'kohen gadol, she's not a basula, ein mitami lo. Kohen hedjot would not bury her. So apparently Rabbi Shimon has Xera Shava. In the Parsha of Nesui Kohen Gadol, it says, Ki im b'sula min amav yikach isha. And then in the parsha of Heter Tumah Lachoso, in the case of a Kohen Hedjot, it says, Lachoso absula akrov elav asher lo hoisa leish lo yitama. So we have the word basula in both psukim, in both contexts. And the Torah apparently is equating the basula who becomes asura, the Tumas Kohen Hedjot libsula shenemar lekohen gadol. So we have basula for a kohen gadol, we have basula for a kohen Hedjot to be metamila, and we're going to make an equation that only an achos that's ru'uya li nase lekohen gadol, then a kohen Hedjot is metamila. So according to our Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon holds that mukas eitz is asurli nase lekohen gadol, meaning she's not considered a basula, and therefore even a kohen Hedjot is not allowed to be metamila after her death. And on this din, there are those who reject and are cholek. Again, the other Tanoim that are mentioned in the Bryce. So Rabbi Shimon holds that in the case of a mukas eitz, since she's asura lekohen gadol, she's not ruya lekohen gadol, she's not a psula. Therefore, kohen Hedjot is not metamila to bury her because you need ruya lekohen gadol. And this is a machlokes tanoim. Now, if his sister who died was already a bogeres, then metamila divri kol adam. In other words, all the Tanoim concede that he is mitami to his sister who's a bogeres. Even Rabbi Meir, who holds that a kohen gadol is not allowed to marry a bogeres, nevertheless he would be mat to the kohen, again a kohen Hedjot, to be mitame to his sister who's a bogeres. And the Gemara is going to have to bring a source for that. How does Rabbi Meir derive that din? Because again, if we assume that a bogeres is not ru'uya lekohen gadol, and a kohen gadol is not allowed to marry a bogeres, why is it that we're going to allow a kohen Hedjot to be metamila? Don't we need ru'uya lekohen gadol? So the Gemara now clarifies the reasoning of the various Tanoim. My time of the Rabbi Meir for Rabbi Yehuda, the Darshi Hach, with regard to the heter of a kohen Hedjot to be metami to his sister, where it says v'lachosa b'sula krova elav asher lo hoisa leish lo yitama, v'lachosa b'sula, only if she's a b'sula can he be metami la prat la nusa mafuta. This excludes a woman who already had a relationship and she's no longer a b'sula, therefore he's not metami la yachol. I might think shani motzi, I should be mamayit. Af mukas eitz, even a sister who's a mukas eitz, she's not a basula and therefore she should not be metamila. Talmud lomar asher lo hoisol ish. The Torah now narrows it down. The iser tuma lachoso, in a case where she's not a basula, only applies because she had a relationship with the man. Misha vayasa yedei ish. In a case where she's not a basula because she had a bulas ish yotzazu, but not included in this iser is a mukas eitz, even though she's not a basula, he can be metamila she'ena vayasa al yedei ish, because how did she become a non-basula? It wasn't through an ish, but rather through mukas eitz. Now it says hakrova lerabos es harusa. He could be metame his sister, who is an arusa that died, because she's still a basula. And that's the ribuy of hakrova. Then it says elov lerabos habogeres, that he can be mitame even to his sister who's a bogeres. Now, in the case of Arusa, she's still a besula. But in the case of bogeres, according to Rabbi Meir, she's asura l'kohen gadol because she is what? Kolu besuleh, she's not a bogeres. And then we need the special ribuy of elov to tell you that even though she's not ruya l'kohen gadol, nevertheless the kohen hedge is mitame. In a case where his sister bogeres died. So the Gemara says, ha, lama likra. Why do I need a pasuk to be mitame to permit the kohen hedge to be mitame his sister who's a bogeres? Rabbi Meir says that from the pasuk v'hu isha b'psuleo yikach b'suleo v'lo b'sula. It says b'suleo with an extra yud, and we require kol b'suleo. And therefore, kohen gadol is enjoined from marrying a bogeres. If it would have said besula alone, not besulea, then a bogeres would be permitted to a kohen gadol. So since we darshan the word besula without any additions, as afilu mixas besula, meaning that besula would include even a bogeres because she has mixas besulea, then when it says lachoso habesula and it doesn't say besulea, then obviously it means to include in the heter of a kohen hedget to mitami lachoso even a bogeres. So why do I need this pasuk elov l'rabos habogeres? And the Gemara says it's true. I do need the extra word and the drasha and the ribuy of elov. Be marba boger. Salkadite Kamaita would have thought, Neilif, let's derive in Exeris Shav. It says Lachos Absulak Rova Elo. Asher lo haisol ish lo yitama. And in the parasha of Ones, in Kitese, it says, Kiyim ta ish nara besula shalos orasa utfas savish achavim avinim. So once again it says besula, and let's assume that we could derive from the word besula that's said here from besula hasam in the case of ones, ma hasam in the case of ones, the chiyuv to marry her and to pay the penalty, the knas, is only onas nara. But if she was a bogeres, he's not chayv knas. Afkan here too in the heter of tumas achoso nami, we also assume that he's only allowed to be metame to his sister dafka achoso nara, but not a bogeres. Kamash malon, I need elon. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, my Tamayu. What's the explanation for their shita? They disagree with Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Darshi Achi, they dash the pasuk differently. Ulachoso abesula, which is coming to tell me dafka he's metame to achos abesula. Prat, this comes to exclude la'anusa mafuta mukas eitz. His sister was one of these three categories which are not besulos. And now Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon are disagreeing with Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda as far as mukas eitz. And according to their view, in a case of mukas eitz, excluded from besula, the Kohen hedjot is not mitami to his sister. She's not a besula. Now the pasuk says asher lo hoisa prat la rusa. Right? Because in the case of Arusa, he's not allowed to be mitami because she was already hoisa. Hoisa meaning havaya, which is the lashon of kedushin. So once she was niskadcha, she's hoisa leish acher, and he's not allowed to be mitami. He can't bury her. And then the pasuk says hakrova l'rabos arusa shenis garsha. He can be mitami to his sister, who was an arusa, and at one point she was hoisa leish, but now she was divorced, and now she becomes krova lo. And what do we do with the word elov? L'rabos es habogeres. So if his sister's a bogeres, he can be mitami to her. So the Gemara asks, how is it possible to say that according to Reb Shimon, we dash in the word akrova to be marbe arusa shenis garsha, that he can be mitami to his sister who was married and then subsequently was divorced, but it was only during Eris, and she's still a Basula. And here we're going to turn to Amud Beis.